Margaret awoke, startled, a cold sweat clinging to her. She gathered her thoughts. Aged wood creaked, echoing through the quiet rooms. Near the house stood a shrine to Rhea Dana, goddess and daughter of the land, of Rhea and a being of comfort. Margaret sought answers. But the goddess did not speak. There was only the faint whisper of something dark, something hungry. The old seer's bones felt the weight of their age as she climbed. The only thought on her mind, has it begun again? John's mission would be a simple one. He was to investigate Rhea's greatest shrine. His mother presented him with a fresh divinity shard. From his brother came a newly sharpened sword. His wife gave him a kiss, and his daughter's hugs were full of reason to return home safe. Rhea, a land long forgotten, a place of unimaginable beauty. Magnificent, but dangerous. A land of love found and of love lost. The ancient tree had been cut down. Together, father and daughter described the horror, the creatures dripping with decay that slithered into bodies stuck between life and death to bolster their ranks. Grandma Margaret confirmed what they all feared. It was the corruption, a cruel entity spoken of only with hushed voices, an ocean of darkness that flowed from the top of Mount Morta. And the Bergsons' duty was to stand against this devouring deluge of death. Kevin was also eager to do his part in the family's fight, especially when his older brother Mark was off somewhere. He was as much a guardian of their mountain home as any of them. She stood. If they were to reach the summit and destroy this evil, as the Bergsons of old had done in the past, they would need the assistance of the sanctuary. Given to the Bergsons by Rhea herself, the sanctuary was a gateway to the mysterious lands around the mountain. Margaret pointed to the huge crystal at the center of the den, revealing their next task: to activate it and open the way to the source of the corruption. And once Rhea's 3 spirits are gathered on the grounds, the only gate to the top of Mount Morta will open in this chamber. By himself, or with the assistance of those who loved him, John needed to gather the 3 spirits from their lands. Without them, he would not be able to stem the flow of the corruption. A celestial shard, chipped directly from the ancient crystal in the sanctuary. It would be the Bergsons' lifeline, a tether to pull them back home before death's fateful whisper. Filling the winding tunnels of the silk-covered caves, the acrid taste of poison lingered in the air. Spiders. Linda told herself it was only target practice. As she readied her bow, they must find the spirit deep within the caves. They gasped for air as the celestial shard brought them back, a sensation no hero could become accustomed to. As she heard John and Linda describe their foray, thoughts rushed through Margaret's head. The corruption had amplified the creature's wickedness, and no longer were they part of the harmony of the Rhea. With the new threats looming, Margaret asked Ben to prepare his workshop. He would have to take charge of enhancing the warrior family's weapons and armor. The halls of Anea Daya, so mesmerizing in their magnificence, were to be found at the end of a long road. And a hero never knows what is waiting them at the end of a road. Moving is more important than reaching. Kevin's need to help all began when his elder brother Mark left the house. His brother was strong, making any near him feel safe. But he left Kevin. Though Uncle Ben knew what his nephew needed, a focal point for his aspirations. A mother away from her child would cause worry even in the best of times. This was far from the best of times. It had been more than a year since Mark, Mary's eldest son, had gone to live in the monastery deep in the forest. The same forest that was now the source of such worrying news. Uncle Ben pondered over a map he received from a refugee. The Silk Caverns were a twisted maze of dead ends and venomous nests. But somewhere along the right path, a Neadia, spirit of the Caldipo Caves, rested. A set of daggers made just for him. They would be his guide to finding himself, his focal point. The boy tested them. They felt good. Not too heavy, not too light. Like an extension of himself. Uncle Ben suggested a few practice swings outside. The daggers sliced the air, guided with an easy grace. His nephew was clearly a natural with the blades and would be ready to join his father and sister in no time. But the boy's mother had words on that subject. 2 of her children were already risking their lives, and she would not have her precious little boy out there as well. Regretfully, he took the daggers away. Who was he to argue with a mother when it involved her child? Handing over the daggers was like abandoning a part of himself. He was meant for them, meant to be out there fighting for what was right. He just needed to convince them. She knew where it was coming from. Her ancestors had spoken of such corruption flooding down the mountain. But Grandma Margaret wanted to know what it was and what needed to be done to destroy it. Lucy could spend hours with paper and pencil, giving life to objects she witnessed in the clouds, drowning herself in her own world, a place empty of life's trials and tribulations. And away from Grandma Margaret, who was always insisting that she continue to practice her other specialty. Worried for the missing boy, Ben thought that maybe he should have hidden the daggers better. Margaret, in her wisdom, knew that nothing would have remained hidden from Kevin forever. Now, she only encouraged her son and his daughter to hurry and find him. Kevin returned from his saga with barely a scratch, yet he found no appreciation from his family, especially his father. Despite having Linda on his side, his father was still mad at him for endangering himself and worrying them all, including his pregnant mother. His favorite line, asking how he could be so inconsiderate. He wondered whether Uncle Ben would understand his bravery and initiative better. With his heroic act unrecognized, the young boy waited, frustrated, expecting more punishment. What Kevin had not expected was his parents' reaction. Heartened by his courage, his father was going to teach him the ways of battle, and his mother was far from the frail and always worried housewife she had seemed. A Bergson through and through, she gave him her blessing and asked only that he temper his courage with caution. Perhaps Uncle Ben was the happiest of them all. Not only had his nephew held his own in combat, but had done so with the weapons he had made for him. Kevin only wished his older brother Mark was there to witness his rise to the family calling. When light faded from the sky and most were fast asleep, Mary would write about her family, immortalizing them for future generations. All 8 eyes. Howled in anguish as death slowly beckoned to bestow its peace. The Bergson could go no further. The path blocked. The life crystal, as if filled to the brim with life, started to pulse. A way had opened, a step closer to the spirit at the heart of the caves. Though before taking that step, caution dictated a return to home to inform the family of the newfound passage. Defeated, the Spider King had been removed from the path leading to the halls of Aneadiah. Although the pestering of greedy goblins might still prove dangerous along the way. Uncle Ben was pointing out possible routes forward, speaking of the troubles pilgrims had run into in the lost trenches. The past holds both joy and bitterness of time. Sheila could help them, as John said, but Ben could not bring himself to overlook the sting of their past relationship. Margaret knew full well that signs and symbols were seldom obvious and never direct. She was certain that the cause of the corruption would be difficult to discover. As the conversation turned to the progress of the corruption, Mary was curious to know which village had been attacked this time. However, that worry gave way to panic when Lucy entered. Poor beasts, all slaughtered. Maybe something had infected them. The corruption was on their doorstep now. The goblin bandits had been preying on Aeneadae's pilgrims with unprecedented cruelty. Removing the evil would help those who had taken refuge in the caves. Ben had heard that the goblin's siblings' lair was somewhere in the lost trenches. Bergsons had to deal with those two as soon as they could. While painful for a mother to see her son in sickness, was still better than missing him for so long. Mary knew that she would make caring for Mark her mission. Mark had to warn them about the dangers approaching, despite how difficult it was to talk. He started naming the villages that were evacuated, or worse, taken over by the corruption, but soon succumbed to fatigue and fell asleep. Mary recalled hearing of an herbalist in Caldipo Caves that would have the yarrow at hand needed to treat Morta. The Bergsons would once again need to brave the treacherous caves in search of the herbalist. Mark was out of the woods now. His fever gone, he was almost up and about. "Welcome back, brother," said Kevin. He had avoided conflict over the years, living in harmony with nature. But as Uncle Ben was fond of saying, a Bergson would forget how to walk before they forget how to fight. Although in the safety of the Bergsons' house, the young cub was not yet free from danger. Exhaustion racked the animal's body, its chest heaving for even the smallest of breaths. The family believed several plants found deep in the nearby caves, combined together, could serve to remedy the situation. Old tales and amusing stories. The Bergsons well knew that even in the darkest of hours, they would lighten a heavy heart. And furthermore, maybe those heroes of old could teach something of their ways to the heroes of now, while they listened to the trove of Grandma Margaret's stories. The creature that now threatened the hero was a crudely focused inferno of hatred and malice. One raging beast was not enough. Surely, two were. Gasping breath, the second beast became motionless. The poor creatures, twisted by the corruption, were finally able to rest. A path to be cleared of the corruption, and the jewel of life to be restored, the realm of Anea Dia, mother of beasts and the goddess of waters. Before embarking for the spirit halls, however, the family must be informed of the newly opened passage. The goblin siblings lay dead, and the pilgrims were now safer in their caves. But the last step remained to be taken. The warriors knew only that somewhere in the expanse of the caves was the ancient halls of the spirit who would reveal new truths to them. Whenever he could find time, Mark was reading about herbs and salves, his interest in medicine inherited from his grandmother. Making mistakes was part of learning, no matter how talented you are. Lucy was feeling disheartened. Once more, she had better mastery of fire this time. But wait, disaster was about to happen. Thankfully, her father intervened in time. A song, but at the same time, so much more. A tradition that bonded the Bergsons together in trying times. Lucy was trying to convince Grandma that she could face the corruption on her own, despite having doubts herself. She might be able to persuade Margaret, but Mary was another story. Grandma would say, trust the children and convince Mary. But Lucy knew that her mother would still worry. Everybody was worried about Aeneadaya's stone sentinel that they would probably have to face on their quest. Can fire even harm stone? Lucy asked intently. Kevin was having similar thoughts about the alloy Uncle Ben had used to forge his daggers. Heroes from stories were often above mundane daily tasks. Not all heroes made time to eat around the same table, talk of affairs other than war and looming shadows. And now the Fire Child was ready. I need your help, Sheila. If not for me, come to the aid of the family, for Mary and her children. And so Ben's letter ended. His doubts showing, he contemplated his relationship with Aurea, the emotional and single-minded Sheila. Why had they ended? The question still unanswered. An answer cannot be expected to a question unasked. Nonetheless, the anticipation was exacting its price on Ben's soul. He wondered whether he should journey to Terra Lava, to Sheila, a hard decision that had now become even harder after all the years he had spent inebriated. As if night had become day, the cub showed no signs of its past struggles, with Lucy and he now simply dancing the day away. If the little wolf cub was to stay, it would need a room and bed of its own. All too happy to build it, Ben only required some wood and nails from nearby. Aeneadaia, the mother of beasts and goddess of anguish, a protector, being of stone made living. Finally free of the corruption's hold, Aeneadaia gazed upon the Bergson, her emerald eyes weary with exhaustion. The spirit's words took life, forming images to reveal what was hidden from the Bergsons. And us, spirits three, knelt before the mountain god to swear fealty. Our wills were set on peace. His was set on testing ours. And as the test drew to a close, we discovered our wretched ending. As the mountain god exacted vengeance on the children of Rhea Dana and tainted Rhea with the corruption. Thus was another truth revealed to the Bergson, but many more were hidden still. Questions were abundant in the Bergsons' minds. If the mountain god was the source of the corruption, what had made him wreak such havoc? How had no one known about him before? They needed to find the next spirit, as maybe they had an answer to some of their questions. More truths awaited them in the land of the winds. Never would a wolf cub live in as nice a house as the one Ben was building. When asked what name to put on the house, Lucy yelled out, "Riker! Riker the wolf cub!" And yet another letter, this time more intimate. All Ben wanted was to hear something, anything back from Sheila. He made no requests and made no mention of past events. Once again, he considered going to Terra Lava if no reply was forthcoming. Sand swept across the land, scraping against the stone of a monument built not from devotion, but blood and sweat. Atop it stood a Nairaha, with the lost ruler Bushra waiting. Linda felt a deep sorrow. She saw that her tree, the tree her father had planted the day she was born, had withered and died. Though when she looked upon her grandma, her sadness lessened. Margaret was always a glimmer of light in the darkest of hours. Why would the mountain god corrupt the world? What kind of evil was it that brought it forth? For Margaret, these questions were as important as where and how. Sometimes, just as you are getting ready to leave, someone arrives and you stay for them forever. Sheila's ring drew Ben's attention. The same ring that Sheila had always said belonged to her firstborn. This man was their son? Ben could not stop staring into Joey's eyes, the eyes that he had gotten from Sheila. When Joey informed his father of the many years since his mother's passing, Ben's heart felt cold. In that single moment, with the single gulp he drank, the memory of all the years with her passed through his mind. Regret became his companion then. It was not the warmth of the drink, but his son's touch that brought him out of the coldness within. Sheila was dead, but their son was here. Nostalgia of days lost mixed with dreams of days to come. He felt as if he was there when Joey had been born, when he had grown up and become the man he was now. Ben had already lost his wife, but that was in the past. And this was the future. A future they had to build now, together. Joey was ready to fight alongside the other persons to clear a road to that future. Joey and Mark had not known each other for long, but as happens with some young men their age, a friendly rivalry was already taking shape. The manipulator of the disenfranchised, the leader of rats, with fingers sharp as daggers and a soul lacking its humanity. Truth was, No one chooses the life of a thief. The crystal was calling the hero back through a path opened anew from the sacred city of Anai Raha, the spirit of wind and weather. Bergson felt a strange wariness as home beckoned. The chamber groaned and trembled, darkness replacing light. Above, the family waited to eat, comfort replacing vigilance. Snatched, gone, dread replacing happiness. One body was taken, but two souls were in need of rescue. Disbelief was not a strong enough word, and denial was not a luxury they could afford. They knew all too well that Grandma Margaret was gone. hero may fade, but they never disappear. Their actions left to echo through an eternity, carried by those lives they touched. No one could believe that Grandma Margaret had passed away. The Bergsons shed their tears, hearts filled with sorrow. Ben and John were shocked to their core. The letter left by their mother spoke of a terrible secret, the one way to stop the corruption. The only way, she claimed, was to sacrifice their soon-to-be-born child to the god of Mount Morta. It was unthinkable. Perhaps their mother had made a mistake, had somehow misinterpreted the signs and ciphers. John thought they should keep the letter a secret for now. John did not look up, dreading even the possibility of having to look his wife in the eye. How could he tell her so terrible a truth? Mark did not know what the truth was, only that something horribly heavy was weighing down his father's spirit. And Mary, oblivious, was daydreaming about the child she would soon bring into the world. Although they were still mourning the loss of their grandma, they had to continue with their mission. 2 more spirits of Rhea needed to be freed and brought to the safety of their home. John thought they should be able to find the temple that housed Anairaha, the spirit of the winds, somewhere in the city of Barahat. Maybe he could shed some more light on the nature of the corruption and the mountain god. Mary had already started studying Margaret's books of potion making and recipes before the disaster had struck. She worked through them cautiously and patiently. After all, someone had to follow in Grandma's footsteps and help the family in their efforts. It was merely a soothing potion Mark sought among his grandma's books. But what he found was like a bolt of lightning through his heart. They would have to sacrifice the newborn babe to the mountain god to stem the tide of the corruption and save the world. Knowledge sometimes brings great suffering to the compassionate. The wish that their mother was alive was a shared longing for Ben and John. The younger son placed Margaret's staff on the same pedestal he had taken his father's sword from, his mind wondering about the truth of the horrific secret that their mother had left for them in her final letter. The fruit lay before them, gathered out of gratitude. There was nothing but a few footprints to betray who may have left it there. Soon, the Bergsons would have to face Bushra, the villainous ruler of Barahut and lover of the wind spirit. Agitated, Ben was pointing out the passes that led to the halls of Anairaha. John, however, was lost in his thoughts, thoughts that only Mark could guess. Lucy's warm embrace and her sweet kindness negated some of the chill the trials of captivity had left in Mary's bones. And when even that was not enough, her son's herbal teas sometimes helped. "You are not holy? Just nothing but a rotten trunk," Ben was muttering angrily. No longer able to hold the terrible secret to himself, he told his son the painful truth about having to sacrifice the child that would be born soon. Sharing the heavy burden would hopefully calm him down. John's quivering voice was scaring Mary, making her fearful of what he might say. She started to feel the corruption inside of her. But the truth was far worse than her illness, worse even than her death, which she only prayed that would leave her be before her child was born. What was the unborn child's crime that it had to be sacrificed? Mary cried before fever stopped her from saying more. John tried to assure her, talking of uncertain fate and that they should not succumb to despair. After all, they were not defenseless against a future not yet here. They had 2 more spirits to find, and maybe they could offer a solution. On an evening just like any other, the old man appeared, followed by someone else, but it was not his apprentice. The man now carried the weight of 2 upon a body where youthful curiosity had been replaced by remorse and obligation. He sought safe haven with the Bergsons so that he may discover something worthy of his son's legacy. Raha, the god of the free wind, now tethered to the ground. His voice to the now just the warden of his prison. The air touched him, filling him and ruffling his feathers. He looked upon the Bergson, small and fragile, but so full of hope. Infectious hope. Perhaps this would be the last time. The spirit's words took life, forming images to reveal what was hidden from the Bergsons. And so it was their fate to do battle. The children of Rhea Dana, on the cusp of victory, would find their world overrun with the corrupted, drowning them. And when they could fight no more, they would bow to U's demand. But there was no salvation in fighting his corruption. By giving a heart-wrenching sacrifice, they would stay the gods' thirst for mere centuries. Thus was another truth revealed to the Bergsons, but there was still more hidden. The children of Rhea Dana, the Bergsons' destiny, and how much of it Grandma had found out before her demise were the subject of much speculation among the family. Speculation without certainty. When Linda told them about Mary's deterioration, they knew they had to do something to prevent another catastrophe. Mark tried to help with his knowledge of herbs. He knew that somewhere around Berahut was a tree, and an extract of its seeds might help stop Mary's chills and fever. But Berahut had surrendered to the corruption, and not even the trees were safe from it. Uncle Ben examined the unusually warm stone for some time. Intrigued as he was, additional stones with strange properties would be required. If any more appeared, they were to be brought to him immediately, for a machine of great importance could be fashioned from them. Each time Kevin dabbed his mother's forehead with a wet cloth, he could feel her breath coming a little easier. He would do it forever if he knew it would make her well. the tree of prosperity is withered after twisting away from Rhea's will. Left behind the seed that the Bergsons were looking for. No time to waste. Mary was waiting. A sip of the potion was enough for Mary to open her eyes and for John to exhale with relief. Unbidden, pain shot up Mary's spine and filled her eyes. Something other than her illness. The baby was coming. It was time. The air was suddenly still. Mary's sickness had made them forget that the ravenous mountain god was after their baby. Curses! The black altar had come alive with an ominous will. Even Rhea's light couldn't keep it at bay, couldn't delay the evil of the sacrifice forced upon them. When John held her for the very first time, she was crying the song of life. Life was all that went through her father's mind. How he wished that he could give his own life instead of his baby's. But his life was worthless to the cruel god. Mary burst into tears. She feared that John was going to give up their baby to save the world. A world that at this moment was worth nothing at all to her. What chance did the Bergsons have against this monstrous cruelty of an immortal god? What a rotten fate that had doomed them to this destiny. How could John accept this heinous cycle of looming apocalypse and child sacrifice? His whole body shook from the conflict inside him. Every glance from his family was like a mortal wound to his heart. Would they let hope die this day? This could not be the end. No. Grandma had already sacrificed herself for them. There would be no more sacrifices. Together, they were going to break that cycle and defeat unjust fate. And the look in their eyes became one of resolve. For life, for hope. The flying creature they were seeing in the sky filled Lucy with excitement. Could it be a dragon? However, Kevin had heard Mark say that there were no dragons left on Rhea, and he told Lucy the same. It wasn't hard for Uncle Ben to guess that this strange woman was from the far north. The Bergsons were curious to know her reason for making such a long and arduous trip down south. The details Apon knew about fighting the corruption surprised the family. and stirred more than a little respect for her. Yet more surprising was the fact that the wife of a tribe chief would take unto herself to journey south and give aid to the Bergsons. Apon joining in with the Bergsons would help them in their quest. Moreover, Mark could learn a thing or two from her in the art of combat. Would their decision bring even more of the mountain god's corrupted wrath upon them? They worried together, but each time they looked at Hope and saw her smile, resolve and belief in a better future would ease their worry. Was not defending their home more important than saving yet another spirit? Was there any other way to defeat Wu? Many questions remained without answers. They knew of no other way than freeing Anai Sarawak, third and final spirit, the spirit of dreams, one who could answer more of their questions. Corruption seemed different, but what had changed was not clear. Though whatever had changed meant the mountain god's answer was coming. Come back to sleep, she whispered. Come back to me.
Never the ones to forget to have a little fun when given the chance.
Nothing but mud and silt. Maybe they had to go deeper to reach water. It occurred to Ben that the old digging equipment may be of use. He woke, wondering only how one could fight true despair. Never before had the Bergsons seen, nor had they heard, such a vast trove of myth and legends. They were so mesmerized by Apon's storytelling that they spent the whole night transfixed as her audience. The area area was rotten with corrupted machines. Who or what was controlling them? Now that Anai Sarava was bound, years ago, when Ben used to live in Terralava, he had seen the construct called Jinn, a large... Mary was worried their water reserves were shrinking fast. In a few days, they were going to run out if the well did not provide more water. Mary's worry added to John's own and weighed heavily on him. If Uncle Ben's machines failed to reach water over the next few days, they would have to go to a nearby village for drinking water. But Mark was afraid the situation might be the same in the villages too. Lucy's quiet snoring calmed her nerves, reminded by her younger sister that it was possible to be afraid of nothing, or at least not to lose sleep. The clouds covering the horizon were so black that even if any rain came from them, it would be a curse rather than a blessing. The clouds only seemed to confirm the ill tidings from the north. Inevitably, defying a deity would have consequences. Dreams come true in there. Standing at the gate of the great edifice of Anai Sarava, the Bergsons remembered that description. What dreamt the spirit of dreams in his slumber? The answers were near. Gears continued to crank on in the distance. The city must survive. now even more soulless than before, without life, and as if none had ever existed within the gears, and a new road forward opened with the jewel of life. The Bergsons stood at the gates of Anai Sarava, where caution dictated going back and informing the others. Were they cursed? The more they moved ahead, the more the corruption came forth. Blocked from light, everything withers. The Bergsons wondered what dangers could lie ahead still. How could it always be moving, always consuming? The darkness threatened to overwhelm them, but they needed to unshackle the last spirit as soon as possible. All that effort for naught. There was no water. They desperately needed an alternative. No one seemed able to make a decision, and Mary was almost at her wit's end. Help, though, sometimes hides in places that you do not expect. Ane Sarava, the architect of Terra Lava, and the creator of Jinn, a machine meant to serve the land, not oppress it. The air became aggressive, the temperature rising as energy returned to the mighty one and flowed through his veins. Anais Harava was free again. As the spirit gazed upon the family, he felt something different, something unusual. Perhaps this could indeed be the final cycle. The spirit's words took life, forming images to reveal what was hidden from the Bergsons. Excitement filled the empty space. The promise made was now a promise fulfilled. The rock appeared on the horizon, and the boundless wonder ended. Journey had met destination. And the vagabond son of the heavens became the mountain god. His heart skipped, his mind echoed with music. His breath caught when the daughter of Rhea stole his heart and carved it with her name, Rhea Dana. Two became a pair, mates joined in happiness. Who willed to elevate Rhea's creatures. From her wisdom, 3 spirits were created to guard the eons. And they lived 1,000 years in bliss. Until Rhea Dana bore him a daughter. The mountain god could not stand her as he envied the child. Furious, he raged at Rhea Dana. And she left him. He wore the grudge as if it were a crown, one made of corruption, cursing the name of Rhea Dana's daughter. He descended into resentment. Thus was the truth revealed to the Bergsons, and the origin of the corruption. She did not speak, just sat there in silent sorrow. And try as they might, the family could not console the little automaton. Pity or anger? The Bergsons stood shocked, not knowing how to react to the story. The important thing, however, was to break the cycle of evil. But they still did not know what awaited the children of Morta in the temple of the mountain god. Final destination was on the other side of that gate. The ending was nigh. Whose territory? The domain of the corrupt deity of the mountain. Their final destination was on the other side of that gate. The ending was nigh. Whose territory, the domain of the corrupt deity of the mountain, is the final step. On the throne, the mountain god U himself, without Rheodana's love, the darkness had swollen inside him, consuming and uncontainable. jealousy would swallow her children. Heavy as iron and difficult to breathe in, the air burned their lungs. It was pitch black. The light meant protection and hope. And the Bergson had to rescue the others as well. These final steps were to be taken shoulder to shoulder. Of another light. Two more Bergsons found, but they all were still in danger from the darkness. The rest of the family had to be saved. Yet another light, fending off the darkness. For now. Time was short. Haste was needed. The final battle was nearing its end. The Bergsons knew that this was the final step. Love must prevail over hatred. The Supreme One, master of all and master of nothing. His greatest fear was made absolute. He was left alone. Left alone to his misery and failure, to the unending cycle of despair and pain. He wished for its end, wished to bathe in an eternal darkness. Mercy prevailed as the wheel had turned back to kindness. That which was expelled from the heart returned. All the time apart melting away, along with all the pain, all the sadness, and all the misery. Land met sky, two became one. Love ignited rapture as innocence flooded the space between breaths. Happiness and curiosity weaved, mixed, and tangled in a dance, a millennium in coming. As the one ascended, but will never leave, a family looked upon the mountain and land over which they were given ward. A family left exhausted was now more complete than before. A god once stricken with grief was now whole. And a land once cast into chaos was now left in serene balance. As the story comes to its conclusion, remember this. When the time spent in this land is looked back upon, when daring feats are recited along with victories and defeats, remember that it was not a tale of heroes or villains, nor of good and evil, but one of family, and above all else, a tale of love. Go now, Guardian, and never forget.